Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Wix's Fun, and I'll be your guide on this meditative practice that connects presence and awareness through the act of drawing to develop our muscle of mindfulness. Each one of these is an exercise that both flexes that attention, that kind of mental presence, by running it through our physical presence here in space and through the act drawing, holding of the pen or pencil, connecting that physically as a medium to the page. And there's a release as we focus inward and then find expression out onto the paper and through our breath, through our senses, flexing, contracting in to work, and then breathing out and releasing to relax. Cycles, following the body, following the breath, finding creativity, and following it wherever it may go. The exercises don't require any special tools or instruments, a pen or pencil that you like to draw with, a pad of paper, sketchbook, some blank page, anywhere will do just fine. The practice is meant to be self-contained, and just take 20 minutes or so for yourself to enjoy some time with the page, to be guided in the rhythms of your body, and to find your own rhythm as they begin to emerge into your awareness. Go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. Today, we look at an exercise that maybe works a little bit with a pulse between deep attention on something simple and then a bit of more whimsical expression, just to let that out, kind of a flexing and releasing of our mental muscle as much as our physical actions there on the page. We'll do a little warm-up on a scratch piece of paper or page in the sketchbook or something. Taking a couple breaths in just to stabilize and check in with where you are. Make sure you have some time, everything's set up in a comfortable location to work with. And we'll begin by describing a short path or arc with a series of small dots. With the pen or pencil, quickly or slowly, just a time for some sensing and experimenting, forming some heavier dots, marks there on the page that work together in a sequence, perhaps making part of a circle or just a little path wandering along. This will be our focusing inward technique of the drawing that we'll cycle through. So in the next few dots, we can take a moment to form them at a more even or attentive pace, working out to in or in to out, whichever feels good for you. We'll practice aligning those with the breath later, but for now, finding the pace that gives you kind of evenness to them in the forming a little bit of controlled communication between the hand and the mind. And once we establish a movement or trajectory with those kind of wells of ink or graphite onto the paper, taking us inward, we can then have a bit of release with an exercise of the drawing, thinking maybe like a little comet or satellite, something coming in from outside, going around and heading back out again, moving on that smooth trajectory, taking shape from the weight of the pen or pencil, entering into the space of the curve, and then exiting out with a nice movement of the arm or wrist. It's kind of the release of the breath at the end. So it picks up our attention to how we're crafting, and then lets some whimsy come into it. Does that sighing out of the breath. And with that, we might look deeper into whatever's made on the page and follow it where it goes, but that'll be our starting point to the practice. So on a fresh sheet or continuing where you were, again, take a couple of breaths just to stabilize, bring some attention to your feet or your seat if you're sitting, to where your hands are, how you're holding the pencil. Recognizing and then establishing where you are, and then anywhere it feels good to start on the page, coming back to making those small dots or marks. The first one picking up where we were, finding an even pace. And as you're ready to move to a new one, taking a breath in to establish position. And as you let it out, moving at that speed, whatever it is for you, of the breath exiting, and then letting subsequent breaths while you form your mark just move in and out at an even pace. Occasionally, when you move to a new one, checking in with a good location breath, breathing in, and reaffirming that speed and flow of the motion. Each mark or dot may take the same time, be a little different, be larger or smaller. Track closer or nearer to its neighbor, each beginning with that establishing breath sequence. A chance for us to practice the connection there between our body's intake of oxygen, expansion of our lungs and torso, and the mindful release of that air from the body, carrying out some tension, some buildup of carbon dioxide, bringing a rich oxygenation at an even pace and establishing a rhythm in a relaxed but even state for the drawing. Exercising our patience and attention to action, we may begin to notice more nuances about how the pen or pencil moves to form that figure there on the page. What do you see into that space of drawing as the evenness of the breath recedes and the attention can come to the fingertips, to the subtle guiding of the pen, to the direction and speed of motion. A few moments of noticing with each new dot continuing the sequence. You start to sense the texture of the paper through your instrument, through the sensors in the tips of your fingers, through the change in speed or operation. Can you hear the pen or pencil track over the paper? And as you may reach the edges of the paper or the edges of extension to your arm in your space, you can always pick up anywhere along the trajectory and continue the motion of the sequence. It could be continuous or linear in the curve, or it could branch off into new directions, to new spaces on the page. Still in that time of refreshing and filling the body with air and using the gradual realigning to that breath and the motion of the drawing to find stillness for observation. Perhaps moving our awareness up from the fingertips and that connection to our tool into the hand and the wrist, the stabilizing muscles of the thumb, perhaps a slight tension that forms in the hand as you lift it just a little bit off the page, skimming there, barely touching part of the breath out in lightness with the hand. Takes a lot of control and effort in those small muscles. Part of the practice of attention, not letting them slip out of our mind and smudge across the page. But if you find fatigue or tightness there, you can always give it some time to rest. Switching hands or finding new position. And does that sensation reach past the wrist into the forearm or the elbow, perhaps up to the shoulder, depending on your position for drawing, sitting, standing, reclined, or at a desk. And through our sequence here, begin to get some motion, some action, figure forming to the page. If your paper's getting crowded, you can take that as a cue to begin to switch to the next motion here. Several minutes of that attentiveness and mindful stilling and opening of the mind. We can now begin to weave our way through this space we've made, starting anywhere with any dot and just using the pen or pencil to create a bit of an orbit, near, tight, quick or slow. Each one responsive to the previous, perhaps overlapping and intersecting, perhaps neatly riding along next to or avoiding, establishing there something you see and using that as the guide. Just let the hand move a little more freely, a little bit longer strokes. In our space of stillness, noticing the change from the tight, small action to the broader, longer movements. For myself, I notice a little wobbliness, perhaps even a little hesitancy of the hand. Just breathing into that space, finding a speed, maybe quick, or maybe very slow and deliberate, to engage with those sensations. The page, a collection of these previous marks, may present interesting convergence and opportunities, contracting and expanding the range of our motion. You may move around to new areas. This then opening up, taking in that space we made, in the first part, just to wander through, and if we can, bring some mindful attention to our action, the pacing of the movement, whatever it may be for you. For mine, it's the slow moving in, targeting the accuracy, and then a faster moving out, slingshotting around, feeling the gravity, the well of ink, and letting that accelerate and exhale through my fingers, through the motion of the page, finding some alignment to the breath, inhaling towards the revolution and exhaling with the extension out again. And that cycling, sensing inwards, may expand and contract as the curve that you followed here condenses, twists, reaches back towards itself. You play and exercise and response and adaptation. And we can always add more dots to the sequence if there's space on the page. Or if you've filled in the density there to a place where things compress, we can look for new readings within that space. Finding something through observation, letting our eyes wander across the page for a moment. A place where we might continue the technique at a different intensity or size. Perhaps small, new dots in rapid sequence, following out along some of the trajectories of the curve. Please a moment to just track our past motion recorded there in the drawing. We do a bit of a remapping in points or lines, curves. You may find your own connection here. This one drew my attention. Or perhaps there's something interesting in the space of convergence or overlap between the orbits. Perhaps a thickening of the original forms or dots. Trying a few things out, maybe in different areas, as we prepare ourselves for some time to play in the space we made in the drawing. First, we have to explore, and any small thing could stretch out and repeat across the space of the drawing, or be a localized moment. So take that space you've provided and see where it might lead you for a few minutes. Sequences or unique conditions, or a little exploration of both. What do your eyes begin to notice in the page as you move around it? Are there shapes that stand out? For me on this drawing, the space in between, as a consequence of wrapping around and working outwards at some point, just a direction, a following of the breath and the motion of the hand, now provides a sensation and interpretation of a space within, a space without. Maybe if you have a lot of overlap or intersection, interesting shapes form there. What is the eye drawn to as that active looking at what is formed? And can you highlight some of those, bring emphasis or tracking to what the eyes are responding to? Finding your space formed by that initial breath and action. And now whatever you've found will take a few minutes in quiet to dig deeper into it, to doodle and wander through the space here. And as you do, try to bring your own attention to your breathing, to the speed of motion aligned with that breath, as you have some time to explore your own mindfulness there on the page. You drawing freely, exploring what you found and tracking that technique. We take some time in that wherever you are to check that in with our breath. We get a few final repetitions of connection between the body and action of drawing. So whichever way you're making marks or whatever you're tracking, find a place in it to let the in-breath fill the lungs. And then as the breath falls out, moving with the pace that you feel connected to that breathing. And depending on what it is your action may be now, you may have time to reset to the next action with the next breath, finding position and letting the out breath be the guide of speed or rhythm. Or if you're drawing longer things, or many things, just begin to find a connection, an alignment between when the in-breath and the out-breath cycle. Notes with each new mark, tracking the ticks between inhaling and exhaling. Finding for yourself that connection again where we began. Internally, the cycles of breath supporting all action, oxygenating the mind, oxygenating the blood to the muscles and the tissues that let us move our hand here, our pen there. Let the expression flow out by giving it a little attention and perhaps a little presence and forefront awareness as it supports us in the background, adapting to new situations, guiding our intensity, suggesting when things may be too fast or too slow, and sometimes the breath can become confused or desynchronized. And some moments of practice each day through exercise, through breath, attention, or meditation, through a drawing connection can help to keep it in our presence, give us access to speed up, slow down, connect with that pacing that's happening within us, and bring that mindfully to what's happening without. There are a couple of minutes left. You can let the attention to that breath slowly slip away. Maybe taking a few larger, deep breaths to expand. Continue your drawing. It's comfortable. Maybe wiggle the fingers and the toes a little bit just to come back to awareness of the whole presence of yourself in space. That releasing of the work you've put in, the tension that builds, and then soothes out, even just in our breath or in guiding a curve or a line, finding a shape, repeating a motion. With exercise to build and to release, and we find both in that cycle. And as you feel ready, feel free, if you like, to keep drawing at the time here of the shared practice comes to an end. Drawing together can spawn off into continued expression. Maybe you found something interesting, or just a chance to sit for a few seconds, let those hands relax, palms up, palms down. Feel the table and the page, feel the change in position. You turn them in or out, just to give them a little oil change and movement from all that time focused there with the pencil in the hand. Good to check in, and then take a deep breath. Reestablish in the space around you and prepare for the rest of your day. Sometimes you find something there, a little doodle that inspires you, draws your attention out onto the page, brings some expression from yourself into this world, just through a simple medium of a pen or a pencil. Sometimes that may pull us in, distract us, inspire us. And when we can give ourselves a little bit of time and a little bit of space to follow that for a moment, to combine work and effort, building attention and mindfulness with whimsy and play, who knows what we might find. This is where we can generate that space of creativity for ourselves, things that don't need to work out, things that may inspire beyond what we ever imagined. A few moments with some simple marks, following a trajectory, then giving up some of that to whatever may come on the page, practicing our adaptability, practicing measured response, exploring. What did you find? Share it in the comments. Let us know about your experience. Any feedback you might have, I'd be happy to hear, or things you would like to explore through this meditation of drawing. There's been over 100 of these episodes now, covering many topics, some technique-driven, others just a doodle on the page to see where it might take us, and there's probably many more that pop into your head as you practice each week or sketch on your own notebook, so share it below and give it a thumbs up if you like the video. Whatever way you find to give yourself some space for practice and mindfulness and creativity, I hope you follow it and find something interesting. This is Rooks is Fun, signing off. Draw well. Thank you.